and welcome back to Adobe Live, everyone. My name is Ryan Selvey, and we are so lucky to be joined by VooDooVal today. We're going to be going over
Hi.
some fantasy illustration. Hi, how's it going?
It's going good. I'm excited to number one be streaming with you because it's been a while. But number two
Yeah,
to jump into some fantasy nerd stuff. It's gonna be a blast,
Nerd
I think.
Hour.
Yes.
Which is a nice surprise. Hello to everyone that's over in the chat. We have Jack and Clever, Keys, Wade, Robert, Joshua, a bunch of friendly faces that we are familiar with in the chat. Good to have you guys here. Also live over on YouTube with Bradley Smith. Hey, Bradley, welcome to the chat. If you guys have questions as we are going through with this, please by all means throw them in the chat. I will relay them to VooDooVal. But for people who are joining for the very first time and have never heard of me or you, you want to give a little quick rundown of who you are?
Yeah. Hi folks. I am Voodoo Val. You guys can call me Voodoo or Val, whichever. I also answer to Lord Valpatine sometimes on the
No way. All
weekends.
right.
Yeah. I am a digital illustrator, and I kind of focus on like fantasy portraiture and dark fantasy illustration. So all the spooks, the spoopy
Okay.
stuff, that's my specialty. I have been an illustrator and Photoshop instructor, fresco instructor here on Adobe Live for many years. But I also work as a freelance artist, and I do have done some pretty cool projects recently. I did a lot of the character illustrations for Dimension 20's Coffin Run season. So if you guys
So
are
cool.
D&D fans, there's some D&D work of mine out there. I also illustrated a great project, which you guys, if you are into fantasy and stuff and you would love to check out a new show, there is a show called DesiQuest that I just did illustrations for, and it is a Dungeons and Dragons actual play featuring an all Southeast Asian cast featured in a Southeast Asian fantasy world, kind of doing some really awesome work to get some diversity in that industry and highlight some voices that have not really been highlighted in the Dungeons and Dragons world. So check that out. And I also do posters for Star Wars sometimes. So it's a lot of nerd stuff
You a Star
happening
Wars
over here.
fan? No
I
way. No
I
way.
sometimes I have been known. And today we're going to be working on illustrations for a story of my own called The Dungeon Mysterium, which have I started writing this and I love to write. I've been writing longer than I've been illustrating, but I'm really, really nervous and a little embarrassed to share my writing. I'm sure everybody has that creative moment here and there when they're doing something new and they feel a little awkward or a little scared to do it. And I started writing this and then I stopped because I got a little scared, but I'm picking it back up and I'm sort of reinvigorating the project. I'm going to finish it and I'm going to be doing some illustration animations for it. But today we're going to work on an illustration for a brand new chapter, which I'm pretty pumped about. And I have my Instagram up here in case you guys are interested in checking it out. What I started doing, you'd have to scroll down because, like I said, I started this and then I stopped it. But I started posting this as like a mini series that you could read on Instagram. So, like, if you go into the illustrations, you can flip through and there's like the little mini chapter right there. So you could go through and kind
Nice.
of find it. And I was like, why not, try to do something like this. But yeah, I'm pretty pumped about it. And I think also as you scroll through my Instagram, you will realize that my portfolio kind of looks like 8 different people contributed to it because I have like monsters and creatures and dark fantasy, and then I have Animal Crossing, and then I have like fish, and it's a little crazy. But yeah, this is all my stuff. I think I have like my little Lady Venom here too, which is fun. So that's what we're going to be working on today.
Nice
Who
variety.
are you, Ryan? Who are you?
Oh, well, I am not the belle of the ball today, but I am a live streaming motion graphics artist. I am also a big fan of Animal Crossing as well. Speaking of Dimension 20, by the way, I saw that
Mhm.
they I think recently sold out Madison Square Garden, which is like
Yes.
isn't that a telltale of the times of the importance and prominence of fantasy and D&D?
Yes,
Um, it's
absolutely.
cool to see you involved in this. Now you have six chapters out already for the
Mhm.
Dungeon Mysterium on your Instagram. Will this be the seventh, or are you pulling a Star Wars and we're gonna like just yeet all the way over to like chapter 18 and then we'll, work our way over?
This is going to be for chapter number 7.
And chapter number
So
7, okay.
yeah, I'm really pumped, and this is kind of a cool. I'll tell you about a little bit about the story. So the Dungeon Mysterium is about an unnamed young woman who is sort of thrust into a cave called the Dungeon Mysterium that sort of manifested overnight. It takes place in like a medieval type fantasy world, and this cave just showed up, and it appears to be sentient. It sort of keeps its own tally of who has entered and survived it. So this like massive bazaar of like people like merchants and stuff has kind of sprung up around the opening of this cave as more rumors start to spread across the land, and adventurers and mercenaries and all kinds of people with and without magic sort of show up to see if they can conquer this dungeon. So our character, like I said, she doesn't have a name. She's been arrested for thieving, and she is like kind of a street urchin type, and she is going to conquer the dungeon essentially, which is going to
Nice.
be horrifying maybe, and but hopefully very, very cool. And for chapter number 7, we sort of get to the point where she enters the dungeon, and it becomes very apparent that this is not a simple cave, and that it has no discernible layout that is based in any, I suppose, familiar sense of reality. It moves and it changes, and all of the creatures within are very different than those you may encounter on the surface. So we are going to be working on the illustration of a giant snail today, which I'm going to pop over here and show. And this snail has become a kind of I would say an ecosystem in and of itself. It is very large, and it also has sort of like all these gonna have all these mushrooms and like moss kind of growing over the shell of it. So it's like this huge, like I would say, like wolf-sized snail that kind of meanders through the cavern, and I'm pumped about it. So
Yeah, and to that point, there was actually a very well timed question from Keith saying, "Does it have a cave troll?" I feel like this is, the second runner
trolls,
up, if not better, the cave snail.
the cave
Then
snail,
we also
yes.
have Ted Chin in the chat saying, "You need to post more on Instagram so I can
I
see new work."
do. I
Hee
do. Hi, Ted. It's so good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's great to see you. I have been sequestered in other projects, and so my Instagram really starts to suffer, when that happens. And unfortunately, it'll probably be a while before I really start doing a bunch of stuff. But I think that this is going to be one of the things that you will see start to like periodically show up as I make my way through it. So,
We
um,
also have another request for more work from you, and this is from Michael Brown
oh,
over on YouTube, which says, "When will drawing a blank be back on?" And do you want to talk a little
oh.
bit about drawing a blank if anyone wants to catch any of the replays?
Yeah, so Drawing a Blank is a show that I do with the wonderful and talented Mrs. Cody Bear, which you guys probably know, Cody Bear. And what we do is it's kind of like a game show that's inspired by Mad Libs, where we basically create for you a really cool artistic prompt, and we allow everybody in the chat to kind of vote on what we are going to be illustrating for the day. And it's on a break at the moment, but it is not canceled. So we'll let you folks know. There was kind of a I suppose like a super mega episode recently, because Cody and I actually got to see each other in the studio. So if you guys want like the
It's fun.
extra long Drawing a Blank episode, if you have been hungry for more episodes, you guys can check out the replays for that if you like. But yeah, we'll probably be back at some point, and we hope so, because we really love hanging out with you guys, and hanging out and letting you be the creative director for our strange illustrations. We've done like video game inventories, and last time we did like a branding for a fictional farm that I think by the end of it, chat designed like the lore for us, and I'm pretty sure the farm was haunted, and we were doing the branding to try and sell it before whoever is buying it discovered that it is full of ghosts. I think. Yeah. So we were like,
Remind me, remind me to never have you as my realtor, by the way. Also,
will
hello to
do.
Barbara
Yeah.
over in the YouTube chat. And yeah, no, we'll have to definitely check some of those replays. Um, to the point of working through an idea here, because obviously when you're doing something like drawing a blank, you have a active chat, as we do
Mhm.
even today, giving you directions and where to go. With this story that we're working on today, you obviously have thought in great detail about the story and how it progresses.
Mhm.
There is the large part that is always writing, but then there's also, the point of conceptualizing and creating. We're working on the snail now. Which normally comes first? Do you kind of see the image of the snail, you try to in your head, and you try to then drive a narrative around it? Is it something where you have the words in your head first, and then you're like, now I have to come up with a snail? What
Um,
does that look like for you?
I think that it's a little bit of both, because sometimes I'll be working on something and it'll feel like I can see like a little movie in my head about like a cool moment, and then I will kind of take those ideas, I'll write them down. I sometimes I will sort of come up with an interesting scene, like an action scene or something, and then sort of building upon it and adding more detail from there will come with the like the artistic portion of it, like the visual art part.
Right.
In this regard, I had written the whole chapter, and then I sat down and thought, like, the chapter was very like psychological, in that it was like the character kind of figuring out how she was going to progress forward. Like, she, at this point in the story, she doesn't really have any hope for herself, because not many people exit this magical dungeon.
Mhm.
And she's not particularly strong. Like, she's actually, most people, when they look at her, think that she might be much, much younger than she is. She doesn't have a lot of muscle mass. She's not very tall. And a majority of the people who are going in to conquer this dungeon are like these big burly warrior types, and so
Right.
it's as she's walking to the mouth of this dungeon, people are kind of looking at her with pity, like, what are you doing, kind of thing. And so she's feeling really frightened, very confused, and so most of the chapter is in her head, and after reading it, realizing like, how would I then translate that to um an illustration that can go with this, I realized that I needed to add more substance to the work, because I have some stipulations for these illustrations. One of them being, I do not show her face.
Stipulations.
Yes, she has no name and she has no face, and I did it that way so that more people maybe could relate to the main character, but also to kind of hit home this sense that she is, to most people that encounter her, she's unremarkable, like, so kind of taking those things away from the character and then giving her this moment where she achieves this incredible success, I thought would be more impactful in that way. So it's like, if most of this chapter takes place, with her own thoughts in her head, but I can't draw her, what then do I draw?
Right.
And so I added more to that chapter after having put it away for a while, and it was more description about what she um, encounters as she's moving through the dungeon in the beginning. The creatures that she sees, noticing that there is a very distinct difference in the size and iridescence of seemingly mundane critters that you would normally find in a dungeon, and how that differed from what she was used to seeing. And one of them is the snail. There are spiders, there are other fungi, there are like these strands of secretions from these like cave worms that glow. And as she gets deeper into this dungeon, she realizes that it has its own light source from the flora and fauna that live there, that sort of thing.
Oh, and
So
actually, that's great transition. You have started with squiggle and stuff. Now you're kind of working with values with light sources.
mhm.
What is your kind of way of building up a character here with the light source? Like I see that you're kind of marking out some shadows. Also, what is this brush you're using?
This is I marked it in my my brush palette as Val's brush, but I want to make clear I didn't make it. I just
Yep.
always use this, and I've been using it for about 10 years. Like I
Okay.
love this. I love using any like dry media charcoal brushes. That always speaks to the way my brain works, which is like I like to kind of carve things out of my canvas rather than create perfect line work and then color that in.
Very interesting. Okay.
So
Very
I would,
painterly.
yeah, yeah, you know, like trying to, it's like a bit of painting and maybe a bit of sculpting as well,
Right.
if you could see it that way. And so I think that I definitely approach an illustration with a lot of texture, but as far as like building out a character and or a creature in this case, and kind of creating a light source, um, I think that I typically always light things when I first approach an illustration, like from the top down, maybe from the top down and slightly off to a side. And as I start to build the form up, then maybe I will change the lighting. Like I try
Right.
not to make it uh too dramatic in the beginning, only because sometimes I struggle with that, you know, like I'm usually painting portraits, and so anytime I'm not painting a portrait and kind of moving into some other sort of realm of illustration or presentation, I can feel a little bit overwhelmed. And so I kind of keep it as simple as possible up until I make those decisions about my piece, and then I start to, you know, sort of migrate over toward what will eventually be the final concept, if that makes
No,
sense.
that's two different approaches, obviously, for two different subject matters. Like you have the different approach for portraiture with lighting as you do than like creatures. But are there any other ways that you kind of approach a creature or a fantasy drawing that is not a portrait that you would like to approach in a way that's separate than um, portraits from creatures?
Um, I think it kind of depends on what knowledge I have about the subject before I begin, because in this case, this is something for me.
Hmm.
And so I don't mind just like, you know, kind of slapping paint down on the canvas and seeing where it goes, figuring it out. Like I know that I want to make a snail, and so this snail will just slowly start to emerge, and I'll start to make different decisions. For example, right now, like I'm liking the shape of the shell, I'm liking the form that it creates, but I feel like I want more of an S curve with the head, you know, like he's maybe looking or something, and like kind of give it more of a dynamic element there. And so I will just change my process randomly, like I'm doing now, just kind of like turning the whole thing and starting to glom larger um I would say larger forms of value onto the canvas. But if I was doing a creature concept for a client where I get a description and stuff, then my process would be much different. I think my process would be more specific and heavy on the line art, because it is imperative that certain elements of the illustration shine through in order for it to be accurate and to the client specifications, if that makes
Yeah, true
sense.
to the description. Now,
Yeah.
Robert's over in Behance chat saying that's why the fun to see the streams with both Val and Cody is how they approach the task before them, which
Yeah.
I definitely agree. Also, hello to Miss Melanie, who says, hello, VooDooVal. Hello, everyone.
Hi,
And also,
Melanie.
hello to Ho Lee as well. Right now, we are working on a fantasy illustration of a cave snail. Now, for the people at home, how big is this snail? Like, are we talking? Oh, Cody's here as well. Hey, Cody.
Hi,
Are we
buddy.
talking like a human-sized snail? Are we talking like, can I fit this guy in my pocket?
I would
What are we looking at?
say if you could imagine like the size of a very large dog, like
Okay.
that's so this is a big guy and they some of them
Oh,
are
the
bigger and
mucus.
larger and oh yeah, it's a problem. Thank God they live in the cave.
Yep.
But yeah, this is very, very large. And as she kind of moves through the cave, what I try to do is kind of like drop these hints and like visual indicators for her and the reader both of like um, things are starting to look wrong, not as you would expect them. And so she does see some of these little guys that are like cute and tiny.
Yeah.
Well, I think snails are cute. I don't know if you guys think snails are cute.
Yeah.
That's
Do you
really
draw snails regularly, or like you
I
just
have
kind of like
drawn snails
winging it here?
before. Yeah,
Got it.
I would say when I was younger, I was fascinated by them.
Okay.
And so I kind of have some knowledge to draw from. I do also have some reference up in front of me. Um, but I have always loved that snails have like kind of a little kitty cat mouth. I don't know if you know this. If it is a lip, I don't know if snails have lips, but if you Google snails and you look at their mouths, they are super cute, guys.
Yeah, cool.
So next time you see a snail, just remember he has a sweet little mouth. Okay.
Sweet little mouth, but you might not want to cuddle with it, you
Yeah,
know?
you might not.
You might
I
want to
have
avoid that.
on a few occasions
Oh
because I'm
no.
strange. But yeah, I love snails. So I'm drawing on some knowledge that I've had for some time, but I think that where where this character is concerned is I'm going to have to unfortunately stray away from making him super cute, and I'm going to have to start making him look a little more terrifying because this
What a
story,
bummer.
after all, is kind of a frightening story. I would say
I mean, it could be like Lotso Bear from like Toy Story, where it's like looks
that's
kind of like a nice
true.
character, and you could find ways to slowly transform them.
That's true.
But do you
Um,
normally start with grayscale and then kind of move into color
Absolutely. In fact, I
just to
would
get
say
value?
that I think that a lot of people sort of know me as somebody that uses incredibly
Violent,
incredibly
incredibly
vibrant
violent
colors.
shading.
I use incredibly vibrant colors in a lot of my work, but I actually start, I would say like 90% of my paintings in grayscale, and I color them later. Um,
Okay.
and
Now, is that
that
true also for physical work, or
I
like do
sorry,
you do
sorry to
physical work
cut you.
anymore?
No, I actually I stopped a long time ago because I started doing digital work and I found that it was first of all, it wasn't easy. It took me a long time to get the hang of it, but I really, really wanted to because I wanted
Right.
for a time to like do concept art and stuff.
Okay.
And the only people I think who really make a living doing concept art where they're working in like a purely physical medium are people who are
Yeah.
like kind of OGs, in the
Right.
industry who like if I'm not mistaken, a lot of people, maybe I shouldn't say a lot, but there's a portion of the team that has still been consistently working on like the new content for the Lord of the Rings. Some of
Mm-hmm.
those older
Mm-hmm.
concept artists that are doing a lot of like traditional illustrations for concept art. And there's an element of that, depending on a person's process. But I think that generally, if you want to kind of work in that industry, doing digital art or having a considerable amount of your process in the digital medium is your best bet. So I was like, "Ugh, I have to learn this," and then
Right.
I got better at it, and then realized, no way am I going to be a concept artist.
But
um,
okay, let's talk a little bit of it though about DesiQuest and Dimension 20.
yeah,
How did that kind of evolve then if it's not if something like a concept artist, I guess more just like a character design?
Yeah, I would say like number one, I got to do like for a project like that, like working with Dimension 20, what they give to me were like, here's a massive spreadsheet full of descriptions of all of the character portraits we need from you.
Hmm.
And so I was like kind of working in my wheelhouse of like what brings me the most joy, like being able um to paint fantasy portraits, and that's the gig. I was like,
Yeah.
oh man, this is amazing. And so that was really incredible. But I think that it's different than doing the concept art, because I think that there's some people in the chat who've probably worked at a concept art capacity. And I know if Wade is here, maybe Wade can also chime in. But doing concept art versus working a gig like the Dimension 20 job is very, very different, because the final product isn't your art. In a
Yeah.
lot of cases, the final product is a concept that you maybe participated in, that numerous people have like changed hands with, until somebody else makes the final decision on whether or not it is dynamic and representative of the
Like
desired
fits
end
the
product.
ask. Right.
Yeah. And then doing something for Dimension 20, it felt like they approached me because they liked my work, and part of the ask was that I add my creative voice into it. So the final product is their vision in my words, essentially. And
Right.
it feels different, and that's not everybody's cup of tea. Some people would be much more comfortable in a concept art capacity, but like dreaming of like doing digital art for a living, I imagined that I would be making things, and that those things would show up in, this stuff that I like to consume as entertainment. But that's not the process for concept art, really,
Okay.
unless you're working on a smaller team. Um,
Hmm.
and also, everybody tells you what to draw, and sometimes I want to draw what I want to draw, and that's not always the case. Like I said, I get to draw what I want to draw sometimes, even for projects like the Dimension 20 gig and like DesiQuest and all that stuff. So um,
Very cool. Now, in the chat, Wade is here. He says, "Can vouch." Very different. You just speak to him, and he
yeah,
comes
huge.
just like Beetlejuice.
Yeah.
And then he says every job has its own quirks. But Keys has a really good question. Also, hello to Jacob Phillips. Keys has a question in the Behance chat that says, "Val, are you more comfortable with characters or environments or both?"
Oh, definitely not comfortable with environments. I've pushed myself to do environments because they're things that I need for some of the stories that I've worked on. But my work here, I'm gonna actually pull up my portfolio. My work is mostly characters, creatures, portraits. Very rarely is it works of like scenes and stuff. And I think I actually have some of them. I think I have like 3 that I've done, like this one. But you can see like even this
Love the color.
illustration. Thank you. This was also for a story that I had written. And it was one of those things where it's like I need like a dramatic painting of this obelisk, but it's done in like a portrait type way. Like even the subject matter of it and the orientation of my canvas is very portrait-esque, because it's really difficult for me to visualize the space for landscapes. And the same is true for this. I did this one after I watched Castlevania on Netflix for the first time. And I was like, okay, we're gonna do some like dark, spooky Victorian castle stuff with a big moon.
This is
Um,
my reality now.
yeah, this is the world I live in currently.
Love that
So
moon though. That lighting is so,
thank
it's like
you.
it's not the key focus. It's kind of a secondary focus. I feel like the flames may be primary focus, but it's cool
Mhm.
as you make your way back into space, the color changes for the depth, but then also like, yeah, how it affects the buildings is really nice.
Thank
Um,
you. I
yeah.
felt so great hearing that, because like the landscapes and scenes are like something where every time I post one, I'm like,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
um
Here we go.
and I do favor like a large moon for a lot of
Mhm.
these. Like a majority of the illustrations that I do, I have a vibe that I like, and I only do an illustration like a landscape illustration maybe once or twice a year, really. So when I do them, I'm like, what it needs is a big moon. I think what it needs is a gigantic planetary structure in the back. And so a lot of these, this was another one that I did for a story that I'm working on currently as well, that's like longer form, like a novel type. And so I was like, I need an illustration of the house in the story. So I was like, I'll draw myself one, and it ended up being something that was decent enough. I felt like I could post. So I did that. But like a lot of moons. In fact, now that I'm thinking about it, of all of these that I have on my main page, half of these
Have a
have,
moon.
have a big moon in
But
them.
you know what? It's good to have a trademark, It's great to
Yeah.
just have something.
I'm not mad about it. I'm not mad
I'm
about
not
it
mad
because
about it either.
I like it. I like it a lot. But yeah, definitely not.
Alejandro Alejandro saying, I love the voodoo style of illustrating, which obviously is moon related. And then Robert has another good question that says, then you take photos. What do you primarily shoot, people or landscape?
I don't take photos, honestly. In fact, if you look at my Instagram, I don't even take photos of myself, really. And
Yeah.
the only time you guys really see pictures of me pop up on the timeline is because somebody's like, "Hey, you don't post any pictures of you," and I'm like, "Okay,"
Like,
because
here we
I don't
go.
know.
All right.
Yeah, I hate taking photos of myself. Um, and I never really feel super confident in photos, and I would much rather my drawings kind of speak for me and who I am. So my social media is mostly devoid of pictures of me unless it's like the same headshot of me. I take one headshot a year, maybe. Most of them, to be perfectly truthful, are selfies that I've edited in Lightroom to look more professional
Love
because
that.
every once in a while, like I'll change my hair or something, and Adobe will be like, "Hey, so we're still using the headshot you sent us in 2017. Can you please
You're like,
give
haven't
us a new
aged a
picture?"
day. I
Yeah.
look the same. It's that Photoshop magic, baby.
Yeah. So I do take photos every once in a while, but I don't do it unless I have to. And my entire phone camera roll is not it. I don't even take pictures of like places that I see. I
Hmm.
just save reference to my camera roll when I see it on the internet or something. That's kind of it. Um,
Okay, now I have a question for you, and this puts you a little bit on the spot.
okay.
You have been subtly adding layers as we go, and we have some grouping of folders and what have you.
Hmm.
What prompts you to move on to a new layer versus working on the same one? How do you
When I
build? How do you approach it?
when I don't want to ruin what I just did. That's
Okay,
that's what I
valid.
make it. Yeah, I make a new layer, but I'm like, that was a pretty good stroke. Better preserve that.
You
And
keep
then
that
I
for
will
forever.
exactly. So that's kind of when I do it, and I'm like, okay. And then sometimes it depends on the workflow. Like a lot of the illustrations, for example, if I come back here to where is I think let me open my Instagram again. Um, a lot of the illustrations that I have done that are more like children's book elo type stuff,
Hmm.
like these, for example, like I did these popsicles that
That's
are
so
like,
cute. I loved that
like little
series.
Star Wars characters. I wanted to do more of them, but I got busy and I was like, I can't, and then I didn't return to them. But all of these I made like large shapes and stuff, and then I just use clipping masks to paint inside of them, and all of those
Oh, cool.
files are incredibly organized. Um,
Oh, sure,
so yeah,
sure.
I promise.
Yeah.
This is the only time that they're organized. So stuff like that is definitely organized. I would say like this one, very organized because I made like the shape of the
Oh, that texture is
ornaments.
great.
Thank you. This is actually I used Kyle T. Webster's brushes in Fresco for these, and
Hmm.
this was we did like a holiday weekend on Adobe Live a while back, and all of my holiday items were tributes to Tim Burton and stuff.
Nice.
So I did like spooky type stuff, and yeah. So these ones, it was like I just did the shape of the ornaments and like the little part that comes out and then like the hook. And then I just painted on the inside and kept everything like really, really together so that I could find them because I wanted them separate for animation, which I typically animate a lot of
Mm.
stuff that I do of this style in Fresco. I think there was more. Yeah, I did like a bunch of these. So all of these illustrations, very organized. Anything that you see that looks like it's more of a like this that I
Like a
did,
build up.
yeah, this one was not organized at all because it's like a full edge to canvas, like you know, painting. And when I get going on something like that, it's really difficult for me to slow down. But like these, like I did a, you know, October, which was just octopuses for October. These were very clean files because everything needed to be very, you know, specific. And then as you get down into like the Lady Venom and the Doc Ock illustration, they're disasters in the file. They're absolute disasters. It's just like 347 layers. Most of them are hidden because I just like hid them when I decided I didn't like what I did, and
It's
stuff is
time to move on.
grouped. Yeah, and I'm just I have no patience when I'm on a roll. So yeah, my
No, I
files
get
suffer
that.
for it. But if I ever
Keys is in
send
the
you a
chat.
file, I'll clean it up.
Yeah, by all means, name your layers. Keys is in the chat saying Jabba the Tart, extra strawberry. I do have an interest to everyone. You had what? You had Baby Grogu, you had
Mhm.
Jabba the Hutt,
Oh yeah.
and was it Jango Fett? Was that what it
No,
was?
it was my Star Wars husbando, Grand Admiral Thrawn was the
Okay.
blue one. He's
Which
my
one's your
favorite
favorite?
Star. Oh,
Because there's three. You did a
Thrawn.
series of three, right?
Yeah, it was a
The
I think
husband. Okay.
there might have
Okay.
been I because I did Pokemon too. Let me
Cool.
pull it back up. I did
I'm a
Pokemon as
big fan
well.
of the Jabba the Hutt one because Jabba the Hutt's already a mess, and
Yeah.
having him melt makes it even better.
Yeah.
Um,
So he was very he was, oh poor guy. This one was like in a slightly different style because I wanted it
uh-huh.
to be like kind of kawaii. But then
Yep.
I was like, but I could do like some more texture and make them like,
Oh yeah, I like the noise.
yeah,
Noise is
like a
good.
little fun. But this one is Thrawn.
Thrawn looking like a
Looking
snack
like
is the caption. That's
I didn't, I
great.
forgot that I wrote that. I was trying to close it out to be it
Nope,
got
it's
weird.
there. It's there. Can't deny it.
Sorry
I gotta
guys.
have the ice
Oh
cream truck come
no.
to the Adobe offices so I can get a poorly melted oh yeah, that's great.
The
Previously on
Jigglypuff
Who's That
one.
Popsicle? Not the
Yeah,
eyes.
I
The
was
eyes
doing
are
a
so
live stream
violent.
for a while called Who's That Popsicle, and I did a bunch of them.
Nice.
So I did like the Psyduck, the Jigglypuff. I
Oh
really liked this
no,
one.
that's my favorite. That's
Yeah.
my favorite. Is
So this one was really fun.
that
And
wheezing or coughing?
coughing.
Coughing,
Because I
yeah.
think wheezing, wait a
It's
second.
the first one? Or is wheezing
I
I mean,
can't
this
remember if
isn't
it's
important.
coughing, wheezing, or wheezing, coughing. I can't remember.
That
But I
was
think
wheezing.
it's wheezing.
Confirmed. It
Okay.
is wheezing.
But
We're gonna
yeah,
get
I
people
did.
blasting us in the chat.
I know they're gonna be, you're not real nerds. I'm like, okay, you're right, my bad. But we did, yeah, a lot of my stuff is incredibly nerdy. Let's like be honest. Like I
But that's what
never,
makes it authentically you, and it makes it fun and feels like you have, a piece of
yeah.
your personality in it. I love the glowing between the boatman's lantern. That's very cool.
Thank you. This is
Um,
another, like, I have so many writing projects where I'm not like really
mhm.
writing for them actively. Like this is one of those where like the loosely based story around it is that like this is Charm and she is a little witch gal
Oh, she's
and
fun.
she
I like her
traverses
bag.
like the underrealm and she's like she gathers things for her apothecary. And it was
Yeah.
just an excuse to have like a reason to be drawing all of these like props and stuff that I really wanted to do. So they all come with flavor text, by the way,
Hmm.
because I wanted to also do writing and things. And this was like another one of my little um, projects where I'm like, maybe, you know, I will do more writing eventually. Eventually, you guys are going to see a book from me when I get over myself, is what I'm
Yeah, I'm here
saying.
for
It's
it.
like,
I'm here to lift you up for it. Wade wants
thank
to know
you.
what toast and cake is.
Toast. Oh, okay. So do you guys remember? Um, do you guys remember for a while there was like that piece of bread with music behind it that
Yes,
got
and it
like
was blowing up on Instagram so much.
yeah, just like so I drew a loaf of bread with like a juicy booty is what I did.
Okay.
And
Yep.
I won't, I think I've scrolled past it. I'm trying, I don't know if I'll get in trouble
You don't know if we're
for
gonna
showing
strike
it, but
for it or not.
yeah, but I did post the toast with the,
Post the toast.
I posted the toast, and I was just like, is this what you want, internet?
Mm.
Is this what you want from me?
I mean, that's how
Because
you
I
got a
was
million
making stuff.
followers.
No, no, would that I could, but I was like kind of on that real grind. And then I was
Mhm.
looking at like what was actually getting views and people were following for. And I was like, oh, bread. You can't win. You can't, So I have since stopped the obsession and the grind trying to like make popular reels. I just don't
To
have the
please the
patience for it.
algorithm. Now,
Yeah,
I'm
man.
noticing here you I know we talked a little bit about your layers. Your layers is at normal 100%. Your brush
Mhm.
is at normal 100%, but with a flow of 30%.
Yes.
You have smoothing at 15, which is just like, like adjust the line a little bit, whatever. But
Hmm.
for the most part, when you're switching through value, are you mostly it looks like you're using the eyedropper tool and
Yeah.
changing from there.
I've got my thumb on Alt,
Okay.
and I am just sampling and like kind of going through and starting to like sculpt this into the kind of weighted look that I'm looking for this. Like I'm trying to find this balance of value where it looks like he's like on the ground, like slithering
Hmm.
around. And I'm also trying to give like this delineation or like a distinction between the underbelly and like the heavy folds of the sides that hang over. And that calls for like a lot more variation in value that I need to do quickly. And like I mentioned, once I start really enjoying an illustration, I have very little patience for, I don't know why. I don't know if
Right.
that's just me or if other people feel that way, but I
The
start to
more I like
like,
you, the more I hate you.
yeah, like I'm just like, I can't put the paint down fast enough. So
Yep.
I have kind of adopted this method of just like sampling whenever I'm like, okay, I need lighter, I'll just tap lighter with Alt and start to kind of build um, with value in that way.
A
Um,
purpose in the chat saying hello. We also have about
Hello.
13 minutes left.
Oh,
Just for anyone
geez.
who's joining us a little bit late, we are working with VooDooVal on some fantasy illustration, just going through her process and different things that inspire her and her work. With that said, if you guys have any questions about fantasy artwork, character design, concept art, you name it, feel free to throw it in the chat. I am happy to throw it along.
Yeah.
And it's been really cool to just see this process kind of just build up. Uh, Val was recently, earlier in the show, talking about equating her process to more of a sculptural building up, also with Painterly. And it's always really cool to see some stuff that is just kind of like magic kind of appearing on the canvas. Keys is asking, so is that moss and mushrooms on the shell on his back to make sure
Yes.
he is a fun guy?
He is going to be a very fun guy. And that's kind of what I like. If we've got 13 minutes, I definitely want to get all these mushrooms in. And what I'm going to do is actually a little bit more of the kind of the vibe or the process that I described before, which is like creating some shapes and then painting inside of them, which I
Mhm.
think would be perfect for this in particular. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do all the mushroom caps. And then I could either use a clipping mask or lock the transparency for my layers. It really is up to you what you prefer to do, but
What do you tend to prefer?
it depends on what I'm working with because like sometimes I'll add something to a piece with a clipping mask. Like I'll start painting on the inside. For example, if I make a new layer and we will, I think, yeah, make a clipping mask here. Maybe I want to come in, let me make sure that's on the right. Maybe I want to come in and add, some polka dots to this. I don't know. I wouldn't do it
Yep.
like this like cartoon-esque because this is going to be a very serious illustration. But maybe I want to do
Very
something
serious
like
snail.
this. Yeah, very, very serious snail. He's business only. Okay. No tomfoolery. But maybe I want to do this, but maybe then I want to add a little bit more to those spots and you can't clip a clipping mask. Like I can't clip to a clipping mask. So I use them in conjunction depending on what my layers and elements need. So if I do want to go in this, like this, these spots are clipped to the shape of the mushroom cap beneath it. And then I will lock the transparency of the spots. So then I can come in and add something only to the spots because
Absolutely.
it's, that sort of thing. So I kind of use them interchangeably. It really depends. Sometimes I know that an element that I'm going to add is going to be very simple and I don't really need to, like it's not going to take me layers of detail buildup to get the point across. So I'll just lock the transparency. It's going to be quick, whatever. But if I know that something like I need to experiment with the texture of an element, uh, and add multiple layers of detail and depth, then yeah, I will definitely clip it. For example, here, what we're gonna do is I've made this shape, but I'm trying to give it a little bit of depth. So I'm actually gonna kind of put the underside like that uh, guild um, texture underneath in this fashion. And I'm
And
probably
to that
gonna
point, real
change.
quick, just as a piece of example, could you
Mhm.
show maybe some of our newer viewers what it looks like when you just release that clipping mask real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. So if I come over here and I'm doing control alt G. If you're working with PC, I believe it is command alt G. If you are, or command option G if you're working on a Mac or an Apple product. So that is what is there. But if I clip it, then it only clips to the available pixels on the layer that it is pointing to. And if I continue to create clipping masks that continue to point down, they will all continue to clip into the space of the most recent layer that is not a clipping mask. It'll keep going down. Um, so that is why I like to use that, and being able to kind of create a silhouette and then continue to make clipping masks is really awesome, because then I can like kind of build out this form that I want to do, and then I can start to, like, as you can see, like I want to kind of bring the edge of that mushroom up so it's not just like a straight up and down like side profile of this mushroom cap. Like I kind of want to give it a little oomph, uh
Little oomph.
as the cool kids say, I'm pretty sure they
But
say
I do
that.
know there is foraging got really big. I think over COVID. I would never trust myself to do it.
Never, no. Like foraging
I
for
was just
mushrooms.
like, yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
no.
yeah. No, no,
No.
no, no. But it's cool to see that you have the gills under the mushroom that gives it an extra layer of depth, like you were saying, and how it kind of flips it up.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm trying
Mm.
to kind of add a little an extra element of intrigue. And the same is true if I go ahead and, in fact, I'm going to group all that because then I can also clip to a group if I want to. And then I can come in and start to kind of give this a little bit of depth as well, like
Beautiful. That
the
that
edge
was
of
such a
that.
subtle, quick little flick, and it added so much shading so quickly,
Thank you.
which is really nice to see. Now you just grouped that all together because you want it to be isolated as its own mushroom, but then you added even a clipping mask on top of that group to say, all right, even everything on top of that, I want to right on top of everything.
Yeah, yeah, like I might want to add to all of this, and I'm kind of trying to also hit home like there's more of these, little fun guys, as somebody put it in the chat, kind of all over the place, and this would be like the central formation. And then I think it would also be interesting if there was, because in the cave there is like these little strands, because there's like cave worms that sometimes are iridescent, and I thought it would be cool to do like their slime is like makes like these like really beautiful and delicate looking strands that glow like along the top of the cave. So it would be interesting if we also kind of took, let me make a layer on top of everything, like kind of started making like this like strange lace, kind of stuff like hanging around that could be interesting, um, kind of draping along all of these mushrooms or something like that could be interesting, maybe just from the edge of this, but kind of like give this idea that the mushroom is, or this big snail is not just like an ecosystem for mushrooms. He really is a collection of all of the different elements from within this location in the story. So I think honestly it's coming along pretty well. It clearly needs some work, and there needs to be like a little more time and love put into it. But I think all in all, starting out from, if we can go all the way back really to, let me duplicate this because I think that was our initial sketch, and we'll group all of this and kind of show a before and after for the last hour. Um,
Wow,
like that's what
hour
we
flew
started
by.
with. Yeah.
And you can see
Um,
also, I know you talked about the S curve a little bit earlier with the adding character. It just
yeah.
showing that distribution of weight gives so much more life to a piece,
Yeah.
which is really nice to see.
Because he kind of was just like really, you know, kind of like his neck was craned back. But, and I think I would actually even make it a little bit more dramatic, because I want it to look a little more fluid. But another thing, as far as like, because I know we're coming to a close here, but for the future of this, another thing that I would do, like next steps for this illustration is, I might duplicate and merge this. And then I think I would start to play with the proportions. Like maybe I don't want this mushroom to be that large, you know,
Hmm.
like maybe it looks a little odd if there's like this huge formation. Um,
It just
maybe
seems
I would,
inconvenient for him.
yeah, it does. And I'm also thinking like he's probably brushing against like the cave walls and stuff. And so a super large formation like that maybe is strange. But I could also come in here and warp and kind of make this a little more dramatic, to add to that interesting vibe of like, you know, that dramatic curve of him, and start like altering that. And then I would also, after I kind of got everything the way that I wanted it, and kind of filled in some of these spaces, because a lot of these, you know, I've built up form, but it's not necessary that it all stays exactly like this. I might then turn the opacity down and come in with my brush much smaller, and a darker value, and start to carve out these moments, and make it a lot more distinctive of like what's going on here, and detail it. And that's how I kind of come into something that's more like this, like
Hmm.
like something that's a lot more solid, you know,
Right.
that feels like a real thing rather than like this kind of goopy mashup of values, you know. Like that's kind of what I did for all of this stuff, is that I kind of do the sketch concept, throw, you know, paint to the canvas, kind of build it up into something that enters a 3D space, and then I will kind of do the touch up. But I always keep my sketch and my sort of first initial illustration in the final image. I never really hide it all completely. I always let it bleed through it and just build up, if that makes
And
sense.
have the character that's there,
Yeah.
and
Um,
the realness of it all.
I don't know how to make
Also,
something look good that's
hello.
super clean.
Well, I mean, like real life isn't super clean, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Also, hello to Meherban. Good to have you here. We're just about to close out in just a little bit. You can always catch this replay entirely. If you guys have any questions about fantasy illustration, make sure you throw them in the chat. Meherban wants to know, do you draw lines with a tablet?
I do. So I actually use a combination of tools for my process. Today, I am working at my desktop computer, and so my peripherals are, I have a stylus that I'm using in conjunction with a Cintiq, a Wacom Cintiq 16 HD, I believe. So it's like it's about this big, and it's just a little screen that I can draw onto. Before I was able to get this, because it's kind of a luxury item. Like I was like, okay, I'm doing this for a living now. I'm gonna get, you know, this product, and I'm gonna draw directly on the screen. But before that, I was just using a Wacom Intuos Pro um, tablet, where you look at your screen, you look at your monitor, and you draw like kind of down on your desk. And then I also use the iPad often, and I draw and paint in Fresco for iPad with the Apple Pencil, and I would say that Fresco on the iPad probably is like 50% of my process, and then 50% here on the computer. So
Wow, very cool. And also
yeah.
that that tablet is luxury because you also have it covered in Swarovski crystals, of course.
Yes, of course. Yes. They're all purple crystals.
They're all purple crystals.
And yeah, there's little lightsaber decals on it, and I don't mess around with my
No, of
luxury
course not.
items. They are bedazzled.
They're bedazzled.
I wish. I wish
Um,
my Cintiq was bedazzled.
I know, right? I mean, never say never,
Yeah.
it's always a possibility.
Ryan wants me to
Um,
dream, guys.
yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Well, thank you so much for shelling out this piece. Uh and a huge thanks to everyone who was in the chat hanging out. Really appreciate you guys. We have plenty more Adobe Live coming up after this, so make sure you stick around. We have some animation with Ray Belvedere, as she does, also known as Pixie Pew. And we will be checking that out in just a few minutes if you stick around here. Thank you so much to VooDooVal. Thank you to everyone who said hello in the chat.
Thank you,
Any last
Ryan.
words?
I would say thank you for being a
Thank you.
fabulous host. If you guys want to check out more about the illustration and the story I was writing, you can follow me on Instagram. And don't be afraid to express your creativity, because that's what I'm trying to conquer myself right now. And I think that if you're worried about sharing your creative work on the internet, you should join me in conquering that fear. And let's put our work out into the world, guys. Let's do it.
I love that. Great. Well, thank you guys so much. Have a good one, and see you real soon. Bye.
Bye.